Alderman Notes. Alderman Preschlack.
Here.
Alderman Gashgarian.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Alderman Luby Weber.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. The first item on our agenda is a consideration of minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on April 18th, 2022. Are there any questions or changes? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Director, would you call the roll?
Mayor Panelian.
Aye.
Chairman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Karas.
Aye.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously.
Very good. For anybody who's tuning in on television, this will probably be a 25 to 30-minute session before we start the real city council meeting. So feel free to continue to watch, but if you want to take a break, that's okay too. We're going to start with the Cemetery Commission. We have a guest speaker tonight, John Anderson, who's our commission chair. Is going to give us an update on the Cemetery Commission. So welcome.
Good evening, Chairman Morris, members of the City Council Finance Committee, and thanks for this opportunity to present our update on behalf of the Cemetery Commission. I'm going to put up and start in here for you our mission statement for the Cemetery Commission. It was adopted 9 years ago, and that mission remains unchanged today. Our commission work is grounded and directed by the principles in our mission statement, which really covers our core responsibilities in the stewardship of the cemetery and its resources, our assets and our natural resources today and, more importantly, for future generations. In financial and investment management responsibilities of our commission are guided by very clear guardrails and objectives which are included in our comprehensive investment policy. Every year our commission carefully reviews this policy, and we then direct our investment advisor, which currently is William Blair, to follow and conform with the provisions of this policy. And we ask our investment advisor to provide a full review of our investment performance to the Commission at each of our quarterly meetings. Our invested assets are mainly intended to fund the cemetery's future operating expenses once all of our plots and niches have been sold. And we recently did an analysis of this, and we don't expect this to happen for at least 60 to 70 years from now, based on the historical look at our sales and our interment patterns. It's also used to fund certainly our major capital improvements as they occur, but it's not very often, and that's as needed. But these funds are not really used for our current operating expenses. Frankly, today, our operating revenues well cover our operating expenses, and so we don't need to touch this money for the day-to-day operations of the cemetery. Our investment policy has been in place now since 2008, where there have been a few minor adjustments, one including last year, a year ago. And under the investment policy, the Commission is required to carry out its reassessment at least every 5 years of the performance and the relationship with our retained investment advisor. And as I mentioned, right now it is William Blair. Let's look at where we are as of right now in terms of our investment asset values, and these are the combined funds for the cemetery. This is a recap of total value of the cemetery combined funds. You'll see that we've broken out the pieces of this. The only piece that is not actually managed by Blair is the cash that is in the city bank accounts. And so this recap looks at total asset value at the end of the fiscal year 2022, April 30th, 2022, the prior fiscal year ending in April 30th of 2021 versus 2008. And that was the year that we retained Blair and actually, frankly, moved to a more robust approach for managing our investment assets. As of 4/30/2022, our total funds are just under 11.4 million. And as noted at the bottom in yellow of the slide, that's a decrease of about just under 7%, 6.7% below last year at 4/30/2021. And most of that decline clearly occurred in the last, well, I should say the last four months or so of the fiscal year. And that's generally in line with the decline of equity and fixed income markets overall for this year. However, I did point out here that if you look at it on a 2-year combined basis back to April 30th of 2020, our total funds have increased in total value by 31%. And our total funds since 2008 have increased by 3.5 times. So it's a significant increase over that period of time. The Commission clearly has looked at this very carefully. We understand the outcome, especially for this year. We're generally satisfied with the performance of the portfolio and accept the fact that it is, in fact, in keeping with market changes and market uncertainties. But it's not what we would desire to have, but it is, I think it's the reality for all of us. I want to drill down on one piece of our total funds and point out that our total cash available in these funds is roughly 1.6 million. And with nearly about $1.1 million of this cash held in city bank accounts, and that's higher than last year. And much of this is due to a very strong above budget cemetery lot and niche sales that occurred later in the fiscal year of this year. In fact, the last 4 or 5 months. So very strong results from the revenue side in the second half of the year. And so with that higher income, cash income, we deposit that into the city accounts, bank accounts. And our general rule is to keep cash in city accounts in an amount that is sufficient to cover 1 year's normal operating expenses for the cemetery, and that's roughly about $800,000. So we're in the process now working with the city to determine how best to move that money out of those cash accounts and into our investment portfolio, what the amount is, and then also working with Blair to determine how we invest that cash going forward, given the significant market volatility currently. This next slide looks at the distribution of our common stock, a U.S. or domestic common stock. You'll see the vast majority of our stock is in large cap and mid cap companies. And below that, it's hard to see this, but maybe the one place to start here is a portfolio performance recap of our current performance, or actually our most recent year's performance relative to market benchmark. It's a blended benchmark. And you'll see that we underperformed the market by about 2.4% for that last fiscal year ending in 4/30/2022. But frankly, our portfolio performance has exceeded the benchmark in each of the last 5 calendar years, and also for the 3-year and 5-year annualized returns. So very strong results overall, except for this past year. Asset allocation of our investments versus the policy guidelines are presented on the top over here for this slide. I should point out that our investment portfolio is, I would describe it as a balanced and fairly conservative, safe investment portfolio. And really we focus on long-term results, not short-term results, because of the way we use those funds for longer-term funding. If you look at it by investment category, cash and fixed income as of 4/30/2022 was at 34%. That's somewhat above our mid-range target of 30% from our policy. And some of that relates back to the discussion we had about cash balances for this year being higher than in prior years. And that's mainly due to strong income from revenues from niche and lot sales this past year. But also, I think we probably have a somewhat higher cash position in our overall investment portfolio as we've moved out of some of our investment positions to mitigate risks during this period of significant market volatility. And also, I should point out that we've moved our fixed income investments to holdings with shorter durations intentionally this year. Our total domestic equities as of 4/30/2022 were at stood at 49%, and that's quite near our mid-range target of 50%. And that overall proportion for our equities has come down from 57% in 2020, and that's very intentional. Total international equities were at 16% on 4/30/2022, and that's moderately below our mid-range target of 20%. And frankly, we've dialed down our international equity holdings this past year as the volatility has been high in the non-U.S. Equity markets. I should point out there's a statement here that I guess we'd like to remind you that we have no debt. We've paid all of our debt out as of 2014, so the cemetery has no debt. Couple of quick updates on capital projects that we see coming our way. One is actually quite near term and underway. The first is the second phase of the Memorial Garden plan, and that should begin in the third and fourth quarters of this calendar year. This will include needed improvements in grading and landscaping within 2 of the 4 gardens closest to the entrance of the cemetery, along with repairing and replacing the bluestone walkways throughout all of the gardens. Plus, we will be adding about 400 more niches to the Memorial Garden, and that's in keeping with the original design. So that'll bring our total niches to 1,900 at the cemetery. Design and plans are being finalized, or actually have been finalized now, and new niches have already been ordered because the lead time required for the construction of these niches. We should be underway, we think, by end of summer into the fall for this upcoming several months. So that's clearly, we talked about this last year, but it's an important part of our investment in the cemetery for the next year. And I want to point out also there's a potential discussion that we haven't really locked in on yet, but we know that we have some issues with storage of our maintenance equipment. Much of that is stored outside. So we're talking about the need for a maintenance equipment storage building so that we can move that equipment inside and protect it from the weather. We will likely come up with some basic designs this year and then come back to the City Council for that, and then proceed with that a year from now. So that's our update. Would you have any questions for me?
Thank you. Questions from the members of the committee? Alderman Bushman?
Thank you very much, John. And, it's good to look at those numbers and
Yeah.
the fact that you're operating with the revenue stream equaling the expense stream. I was wondering, you talk about the additional 400 niches. Do you see a trend towards people going to niches versus lots, or
Yeah, we've talked about it. We keep talking about it. I think there definitely is a trend that direction. There's also a trend, obviously, more towards cremation versus full burials. But it isn't necessarily a constant pattern. It kind of is lumpy and kind of goes back and forth. But this year, we've actually sold a number of traditional lots in the cemetery, along with a good proportion of niches. So there is it's changed, and it is going that direction. But still, we're pretty strong in some of the traditional elements of the cemetery.
in a way it relates to your earlier comment about what you foresee in terms of before reaching the full capacity, so to speak. Are you comfortable with that trend line and you're marketing the
Yeah, we spent a fair bit of time because of those projections this year, looking at what where we're investing and what we have left. And yeah, we are quite comfortable with that. We'll do a reassessment. We're going to start doing that annually, a little closer each year to see how we're doing. But our expectation is that those niches, the niches that we actually are installing in the new section or the newer parts of the Memorial Garden, are comparable to what we would call our premium price niches that we have today, that are very popular, that go they frankly are near capacity for some of those. And so, well, obviously, we think get a good return for these additional 400 niches.
Hi, John. A question on the bluff stabilization. You know, with our beach, we've had quite a bit of issues. Just kind of curious to the east, has that been looked at? And
Yeah,
is
we
it pretty
continue to
stable?
look at it, and actually the city is helping us obviously with that. We have repaired the bluff to the north, and that was done this last year, and it's actually done very well. And we continue to monitor what's happening on, the bluff and the ravines all around us, frankly, but the bluff that goes towards the lake. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions? If not.
I actually have one
Oh,
quick question.
Darren has a question.
It sounds like you've got plenty of niches. How many regular traditional lots do you have left?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I don't have that number for me.
Sorry.
But we obviously monitor it, but I don't have it. But I can certainly get back to you with that
Okay,
count.
that's fine.
and
It's
what we
just a
have open and
curiosity.
available, and how those are being used, if you will. Because some you buy way in advance and are
Right.
being used. So I should provide that to the council as well.
Is there ever any do people decide not to use them after they've purchased them? And then
Yeah,
what
there's
happens?
actually, it's a complicated process, but you have to basically, to get them back, requires some legal actions. But that will not necessarily be our favorite approach to getting more space, but it is an approach that we can do, and we're certainly allowed to do that under the state of Illinois.
Interesting.
So-
Thank you for your service on the
no,
commission.
we appreciate it.
It's, you've done a great job, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Fire and Police Pension Board investment discussion that'll be led by Director Hub.
Thank you, Chairman Morris. Typically, on the July agenda, you would be seeing investment presentations by both the Fire Pension Board and the Police Pension Board, similar to the Cemetery Commission this evening. However, things have changed significantly since last July. As you know, Public Act 101-610 went into effect January 1, 2020. That Public Act is more commonly known as the Pension Consolidation Legislation. And that state legislation required all local police and fire pension funds to consolidate into single funds, one for police and one for fire, for investment of assets only. So the local police and fire pension boards continue to govern benefits and retirement and other disability determinations, but they no longer have under them the purview of the investment and managing the investment of the assets. Your fire pension board transferred assets to the fire consolidated fund November 1st of 2021. So they managed the assets until November 1, and then the consolidated fund took that over. The police pension fund transferred on June 1st of this year. And that was, both of those were prior to the June 30th deadline. And so there was a 30-month period in which local boards could transfer their assets to the consolidated funds. They are not transferred completely, so the consolidated funds continue to work on transferring assets of local boards throughout the state, but Lake Forest has transferred for both police and fire. So in lieu of investment presentations going forward, we'll simply provide you investment information. So I would note that since Marquette Associates, the investment manager for the police pension fund, was still holding and managing assets as of 4/30/2022, we did include a final report from Marquette to give you a snapshot and a summary of the investment performance. You saw in that the police pension fund returned a negative 1.9% for the fiscal year. And so why would they have performed, for example, much better than cemetery? We've noted in the last few years that the police pension board had been fairly conservative in their investments. So while they didn't achieve as high yields sometimes as fire and cemetery in previous years or up markets, they do perform better in down markets. And so we saw that as a benefit in fiscal year 2022 with the loss of just 1.9%. And then what we included in the packet for fire was the April investment report from the Fire Pension Investment Fund. So these monthly reports are available on the FPIF website. to give a snapshot of performance as a whole across the consolidated fund. Each individual board, each individual pension fund will vary slightly depending on their concentration of cash. So the local pension funds, both police and fire, have the ability to hold cash to pay their benefits and to pay their expenses of the fund throughout the year. So depending on the level of cash they maintain throughout the year, that will affect their overall investment performance. But to give you an idea of the reporting that's coming out on fire, we included that in the packet. So we don't have presentations for you this evening, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any about the material.
Questions? Onan?
Yeah, thanks, Director Holub. So one of the premises for the consolidation was a reduction of fees, both administrative and management. I'm just kind of curious, has that played out from a basis point perspective? Have we seen any material changes, or is it
So
just
the-
they're controlling it now?
Nope, I think that's a great question. It was one of the major premises to go forward. The Fire Consolidated Fund put out some excellent material, and I will forward that to the Finance Committee tomorrow regarding the types of fees they were getting at the consolidated level and how dramatically improved they were from an expense standpoint. So that is definitely proven on the fire side. Police has been a little slower to transfer assets because of the litigation. There was litigation against the consolidation legislation. It was found to be constitutional in May. There's an appeal, but police pension boards are now transferring assets at a higher rate, given the judge determining that the consolidation was constitutional. I would anticipate we'll see the same on the police side as well.
Okay, thanks.
I would just comment, the mayor and I were in a meeting with our new actuary this afternoon. Foster and Foster was not retained, and the new one was there reviewing their work and completing their modeling of our finance funding for the pension funds. And I would say we're in really good shape. They mirrored basically what Foster and Foster had said and have come up with a very detailed analysis, which just mirrors what we expected to see going forward, which heading into level funding far into the future, based on a little bit higher than where we're at today. So it was a nice meeting, so.
Yeah, and I'd like, you may recall that we were, based on the whole sort of strategy that was laid out in 2016 and approved in 2018, we were trying to get to what I refer to as a flatline kind of funding responsibility effective 2025, and that is on track to happen. So we're really solid on this at this point, even though there's still some underfunding that's going to come into line very quickly.
But thanks to the finance department, it was a great session, so, thank you. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to the next agenda
I
item.
just add one little side comment. I'm sorry to
sure.
interrupt.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, these two big consolidated pension plans have boards of trustees, and Elizabeth Holub is a trustee of the police plan. So, in addition to having been on the state task force to manage the whole consolidation, so we've definitely got a seat at the table here, which is good to know for future considerations.
You get paid like $10 like the mayor to sit on that?
Not even $10.
I'll cut you in for some. How's that?
Very good. We're going to move on to the fiscal 2024 budget calendar. Director Holub?
Hard to believe we're already talking about the fiscal year 24 budget calendar, but we will get underway late summer. So we do typically provide the Finance Committee a very rough schedule that was included in your packet on page 48. We're not envisioning any significant change in process or timing. So we're still anticipating a capital budget workshop in November, the second Monday on an off-council meeting night. That would be November 14th. And then a operating budget workshop in March of 2023, again on an off meeting. That would be March 13th, 2023. So just giving you heads up on the process, and we'll be back in October with more information.
60 days into this budget, and we're already dealing with the next one.
It's a long process, a long process. All right, any questions on the calendar? If not, move to other business. We're not going to take any action on these, but if anybody has a question on the 5 items that are on our agenda, on other business? If not, thank you very much. We'll move on to opportunity for public comment in our meeting, and I understand there's one request.
We have one audience member interested in making public comment to the Finance Committee, Ms. Katie Anderson.
Thank you. Just introduce yourself and look forward to your comments.
Hi, good evening. My name is Katie Anderson, and I'm a Lake Forest resident. But tonight, I speak on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area. The League of Women Voters of the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff area requests that the financial aspects, including the detailed costs and bidding process of the Deer Path Community Park Athletic Field Improvement Project, be reviewed and discussed by the Finance Committee prior to any vote by the City Council to approve funding of the project. While the city continues to maintain a strong credit rating, this year's economic climate is vastly different compared to past years when the Deer Path project was envisioned. Labor shortages, supply shortages, and the cost of borrowing could result in a very different construction estimate and funding framework as well. There must be adequate time for review and discussion by the Finance Committee members, given the significant scope and long-term financial commitment of the field improvement project. The League also requests that there be ample opportunity by the community to review financial information of the project and to ask questions or comment on the project to the Finance Committee. The League believes that good government and financial stewardship includes adequate notice of proposed actions to the community and open meetings. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. I think you can be assured all of those things will happen because there's be plenty of discussions and plenty of opportunity for comment. That being all the items on the agenda, the members have any other items they want to discuss? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not being none, the meeting is adjourned. We'll take, I guess we, do you want to just start? Or-
How would you like to?
Jason has a comment.
Maybe a couple minutes, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, here you go.
I bestow this upon you.
Thank you.